Tonight on NewsCenter. North Korea's attempt to fire a missile from its east coast ends in failure, say South Korean and U.S. military officials. China condemns it as saber-rattling. Search and rescue efforts continue in southwestern Japan, where a powerful earthquake the night before leaves 9 dead and hundreds wounded. But so do aftershocks. And as Korea's 3 main political parties shift from election mode to operational mode, some who left the party system and won the election as independents apply to rejoin. That could make all the difference on who becomes the top negotiating bloc. NewsCenter begins right now. It is 9 a.m. in Washington, 2 p.m. in London, and 10 on a Friday night here in Seoul. Hello and welcome to our viewers all across the globe. You're watching Arirang News Center. An apparent attempt by North Korea to fire an intermediate ballistic missile has failed, according to South Korean and U.S. military officials. Now, today's launch appears to have been timed to coincide with the 104th anniversary of the birthday of the regime's late founder, Kim Il-sung. Our Kim Hyun-bin starts us off with Pyongyang's unsuccessful celebration.
South Korea's defense ministry said on Friday that North Korea tried to launch a missile that highly presumed to have been a mid-range Musudan ballistic missile. The launch took place early Friday morning at the North's missile testing site in Wonsan on the eastern coast of the peninsula. Officials say the missile was detected briefly and added that it most likely exploded mid-air.
North Korea fired a missile presumed to be a Musudan-type missile in the East Sea area. We are preparing against additional provocations from the North, including a 5th nuclear test and missile launch.
The Pentagon has also confirmed the failed launch. It said its strategic command detected and tracked the missile, but stressed the action did not pose any threat to North America. South Korea said earlier this week that it has spotted a mobile launcher carrying 1 or 2 Musudan ballistic missiles to Wonsan. This, however, marks the first time North Korea has attempted to launch the Musudan. The missile is thought to have a range of 3,000 kilometers, putting Japan and the U.S. territory of Guam within its reach. Military officials say that North Korea has around 30 Musudans in its arsenal. Experts have suggested North Korea could launch a missile today to mark the birthday of Kim Il-sung, the regime's founder. Despite this failure, experts say North Korea might attempt to test fire its intercontinental ballistic missile, the KN-08, early next month, before Pyongyang holds its first Workers' Party of Congress in more than 3.5 decades. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, Friday's launch is the latest in a string of nuclear weapons and ballistic missile tests that have raised tensions here on the Korean Peninsula and led to a tightening of international sanctions in recent months. Our Connie Kim takes a closer look into Pyongyang's possible intent behind today's provocation.
South Korea says North Korea may have tried to bring out proposals for dialogue through its ballistic missile launch on Friday. Seoul's Unification Ministry's response comes as Pyongyang attempted another provocation, defying the international community's calls to refrain from raising further tensions.
It seems North Korea is seeking to bring division in the international community's view by forging ahead with a provocation amid sanctions imposed on Pyongyang.
The ministry spokesperson said there could be questions regarding the effectiveness of sanctions, as well as suggestions on the need for dialogue to bring change from the north. A South Korean military officials said North Korea's missile launch on Friday was to show Pyongyang will go its own way, despite a stringent situation where sanctions, the strongest to date, are imposed on the communist state. Some experts on North Korea say the launch was to send a message to Washington.
North Korea's Musudan missile launch could be seen as an action to increase bargaining power with Washington.
It has been speculated that North Korean Foreign Minister Lee Soo-yong may be seeking talks with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry on the sidelines of signing a Paris Agreement on climate change at the UN headquarters in New York next week. With the potential threat of Pyongyang forging ahead with another provocation, it remains to be seen whether Washington will agree to dialogue with the North to halt escalating tensions. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
North Korea's failed missile launch has also drawn condemnation from its only ally, China. Beijing has called it an ill-advised and unwise move that mounts tensions. Kim Mo-gyun reports.
China's foreign ministry has criticized North Korea for its launch of a mid-range ballistic missile into the East Sea early Friday, which is known to have failed as it disappeared from the radar soon after launch. China's state-run Xinhua news agency released a commentary on Friday referring to Pyongyang's latest launch as ill-advised and unwise. It said that the regime's relentless muscle flexing will heighten the current vicious circle of provocation and sanction, which will in return suffocate its own economy. At a news briefing in Beijing, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Lu Kang said that any actions that could further heighten tensions should be avoided.
At present, the situation on the Korean peninsula is complex and sensitive. We hope all parties can strictly respect the decisions of the UN Security Council and avoid taking any steps that could further worsen tensions.
The news agency also stressed Beijing's stance on resuming the stalled six-party talks and replacing the Korean armistice with a peace agreement in solving this problem. Kim Mo-gyun, Arirang News.
Now, shifting our focus, Japan has once again provoked fury in Korea by renewing wrongful territorial claims over Korea's Dokdo Island. It's part of that country's 2016 diplomatic paper issued today. But according to our Kwon So-ah, there are slight changes in the wording on relations with Seoul that could be worth noting.
Japan has once again claimed Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island as Japanese territory in its new annual diplomatic report, prompting the Korean government to denounce such unfounded claim. Seoul's foreign ministry summoned an official from the Japanese embassy and urged the Japanese government to retract it.
It is beyond deplorable that the Japanese government repeated its unjustified territorial claims to Dokdo, which historically, geographically, and by international law is our territory.
The ministry said Japan should squarely face history and work to improve bilateral relations in the future. Japan's repeated territorial claims over Dokdo has long been a thorny issue between the neighboring countries and a major hurdle for improving bilateral ties. With Japan offering more information on what it calls Takeshima, or the Japanese name for Dokdo, on websites in English, experts say Korea has to do more too.
There are concerns that if we promote Dokdo as being Korean territory in the same way Japan is doing to others around the world, it might give the misconception that we are fighting over the region. But if Japan gives out wrong information to the international community, we should confidently make our counter-arguments with clear logic.
While Japan has not changed its stance on Dokdo, South Korea was identified as the most important neighbor sharing strategic interests in its 2016 diplomatic blue book. This seems to indicate improved relations due to the landmark agreement on the so-called comfort women issue. Experts see the inclusion of the deal on Japan's wartime sex slavery issue in Japan's diplomatic paper as a reflection of Tokyo's hope to improve relations with Seoul. However, this can also seem contradictory when Japan continues to place claims over Korea's territory of Dokdo, an issue as historical and thorny as the comfort women issue. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, in Japan, at least 9 people have been confirmed dead and more than 900 injured in the magnitude 6.5 quake that centered around the island of Kyushu, which is one of Japan's 4 main islands, Thursday night. Japan's meteorological agency says although it did not produce a tsunami, more than 100 aftershocks have been rattling that region. Our Hwang Woo-jin has a wrap-up of the strongest quake to hit Japan since March 2011.
Roads cracked, houses collapsed. An earthquake with a magnitude of 6.5, intense enough to do serious damage on urban areas, ripped through the city of Kumamoto in southern Japan around 9:26 p.m. local time Thursday. This was the strongest since the magnitude 9 earthquake of March 2011 that led to the Fukushima nuclear meltdown. The quake was so powerful that it was even felt in southeastern parts of the Korean peninsula, including the city of Busan. As of Friday evening, 4 men and 5 women have been confirmed dead with at least 900 injured. More than 44,000 people have evacuated to schools and community centers after the initial impact. Scores of aftershocks have been continuing, hampering the city's efforts to save those trapped under the rubble. The largest aftershock, shortly after midnight, was measured at a preliminary magnitude of 6.4. Although a day has passed since the city was shaken to its foundations, the rescue of an 8-month-old baby girl has given hope to crew members, who are determined to press on in their rescue mission. Japan's meteorological agency said no tsunami warnings are in effect, but they advised caution, saying that strong aftershocks will remain for about a week. Korea's foreign ministry is looking into whether there are Korean nationals affected by the latest quake, but said there hasn't been any reported cases of Korean casualties. Hwang Woo-jun, Arirang News.
Let's now connect with our correspondent Mayu Yoshida on the ground for the latest on the aftermath of that quake. Mayu, search and rescue operations are underway as we speak. Bring us up to speed on that. Well, the town in Kumamoto is some 1,000 kilometers away from Tokyo, but we're certainly seeing more people worrying about what's happening in the southwest after the strong earthquake last night. Now, I'm outside Tokyo Station, which is a key transport hub for the whole country, and right now businesses and transportations are completely normal here in Tokyo, but railways in the hardest hit areas in Kumamoto Prefecture have been heavily disrupted and some flights were cancelled. Now, the whole country's been gripped by this disaster. The magnitude of this quake was much lower than the 2011 earthquake that triggered the Fukushima nuclear meltdown and tsunami 5 years ago. But the intensity was similar because it struck on land at a much shallower depth. And more than 120 aftershocks have been already felt in the hardest hit town of Mashiki. Now, it also occurred in the region where Japan's only online nuclear reactors are located, although officials say no irregularities have been confirmed and the 2 reactors remain in operation. And some companies like Sony and Honda suspended operations at their factories there. And the focus now is on to make sure people are safe. Now, tens of thousands of people evacuated their homes.
I'm worried about Kumamoto, especially after what happened on March 11th, 5 years ago. We still don't know the exact details of the earthquake, so I'm checking TV news for more information.
And so far, more than 3,000 troops have been dispatched to the region to help with the relief efforts. But Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said he will dispatch more if required. He also added that the government will do everything in its power to ensure the safety of local residents. At the nation's top office today, President Park Geun-hye held a one-on-one with the visiting Prime Minister of Norway, Erna Solberg. The 2 leaders saw eye to eye on the need to boost cooperation on the trade front, as well as in building eco-friendly ships and offshore plants. Song Ji-sun reports.
Holding summit talks at the presidential office of Cheongwade on Friday, President Park Geun-hye and Norwegian Prime Minister Erna Solberg agreed on ways to diversify trade items and boost investment between the 2 countries. The pact with EFTA, or the European Free Trade Association, that includes Norway, Switzerland, Iceland, and Liechtenstein, those that are not part of the European Union, was Seoul's first free trade deal with a regional bloc. Since the agreement went into effect in 2006, the bilateral trade volume has quadrupled over the past decade to a record high last year, despite the slowing global economy. Shipbuilding has been the key in that mutual growth, with Seoul building Oslo's vessels and planned orders for material shipped from Oslo. While vying to boost support in shipbuilding, the 2 sides also agreed to diversify trade items, as ships accounted for over 90% of Seoul's exports to Oslo, and ship parts over half of Oslo's exports to Seoul as of last year. The 2 will also launch collaborative research into eco-friendly energy and look to establish a seaway in the Arctic. After nearly 6 decades of diplomatic relations, the 2 leaders focused on sealing practical agreements at this year's summit, while also touching on global agendas like climate change and sustainable development. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
In the nation's political realm, following a heavy defeat in Wednesday's general election, the ruling Senator Party is now on emergency footing until it decides on the best way to bounce back from the loss. Well, political observers are looking at the possibility of those who left the party and won as independents rejoining the party as one. In contrast, the victorious Liberal parties are looking to the future after dissolving their election committees. Our political correspondent Kim Young-gil tells us what's on the agenda for the main parties.
The ruling Saenuri Party promised to live up to the people's expectations in the 20th parliament, while also emphasizing need for support from the opposition front.
The 20th National Assembly is a three-party system. Therefore, dialogue and cooperation is pivotal. Without the help of the opposition, our party will not be able to pass important bills.
The party has also agreed to accept any elected independents who left and wish to return to the party since a pre-election nomination row. If the independent candidates return, the party would recover its status as the largest negotiation group in the National Assembly. On the other side of the aisle, the Minju Party of Korea dissolved their campaign committee and promised to do its part as the #1 negotiation bloc in parliament.
As the majority party in parliament, we will thoroughly review bills proposed by each of the parties and decide if they are helpful to the nation.
Interim leader Kim reiterated that there are no political forces that can defeat the people and added that the parties should recognize the authority that voters yield. The splinter People's Party also disbanded its campaign committee and promised to lead the assembly as the prominent third party.
Our party will be the parliament's problem solver. We will take the lead in legislating policies and become the central party and strive to manage parliamentary affairs transparently.
And emphasized that the party's 38 lawmakers were not there to merely cast votes, but rather to change the political landscape in Korea. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Well, it's been 2 days since the election, and we're getting a clearer picture of what the 20th National Assembly will look like. Our Shin Se-min breaks it down by the numbers.
The 300-seat-strong 20th National Assembly has been finalized based on the votes of 24 million citizens. Korea's National Election Commission said there are a total of 51 female lawmakers, the highest number ever, which takes up 17% of the total parliamentary seats. The average age of lawmakers in the 20th National Assembly is 55.5, up nearly 2 from that of 19th Parliament. The oldest member is Kim Jong-in, the interim leader of the main opposition Minju Party of Korea, at 75. The youngest to win a parliamentary seat was Kim Soo-in, a proportionate member of the People's Party, at 29. Reflecting the country's aging population, 161 of the lawmakers are in their 50s, representing over half of all lawmakers. Over 49% of all sitting lawmakers at Parliament have been replaced by new faces. In the 20th National Assembly, 44% are newly elected lawmakers, with 132 joining Parliament for the first time, fewer than the figure tallied at previous National Assembly. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
China's economy grew at its slowest pace since the global financial crisis of 2009 during the first 3 months of this year. But there might be light at the end of the tunnel. Other major economic figures also released today topped market expectations. Our Kim Min-ji tells us more.
China's economy continued to head downhill in the first quarter of this year. According to China's National Bureau of Statistics, the world's second-largest economy grew at a rate of 6.7% in the January to March period, the lowest in 7 years. But the pace of expansion still falls within the Chinese government's target range of 6.5% to 7% laid out for this year.
We believe that recent series of policies to stabilize growth, adjust structure and benefit people's livelihood have continued to produce effects.
Adding a ray of light, other economic data signal that the Chinese economy may be on track to regain stability. Industrial output rose 5.8% on-year in March, while exports also inched up more than 11% in dollar terms, both beating market expectations. Fixed asset investments, a major driver of the economy, also spiked more than 10%. Despite the positive figures, the agency noted that Beijing is still in the midst of transforming its economic structure, and the downside risks remain. And it's without a doubt that growth in the world's second-largest economy has slowed. Last year, the Chinese economy grew at a rate of 6.9%, the slowest in 25 years. And that means trouble for countries that are dependent on Beijing for trade.
Korea needs to find emerging markets that can replace China. Also, since China's product competitiveness is improving quickly, Korea will need to simultaneously work on improving its competitive edge.
A recent report says that a 1 percentage point drop in China's economic growth rate will lead to half a percentage point dip in Korea's GDP expansion. With Korea's high dependence on China, slow growth in the neighboring country inevitably puts a tough dent in Korea's exports and corporate profitability. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, the explosively popular Korean TV drama Descendants of the Sun came to a close last night. But the Korean pop culture boom that it's reignited across Asia, and particularly China, is only beginning to provide economic boost. Now, that would mean more foreign tourists, a rise in overseas sales of products featured in the TV series, as well as more investment by Chinese companies. Our Kim Hae-sung takes a look at the ripple effects from the mega popular TV series.
The sensational TV drama Descendants of the Sun aired its last episode on Thursday with a viewership rating of 38% in Korea, an outstanding achievement when most Korean dramas barely make it to the 10% mark. The 16-episode miniseries was also popular in China, drawing more than 2.5 billion views on a Chinese video streaming website since it began airing in late February. And the drama's immense popularity not only reinforced the main cast status as popular Hallyu or Korean wave stars, but also made the products featured in the show become instant hits.
Since early last month, our shop saw an increase in customers from China, Thailand, and other Southeast Asian countries.
This brand of lipstick worn by the lead actress in the drama series has been flying off the shelves since the third episode. The brand saw sales reach new levels in record time.
I've been following the drama and I got to watch the last episode here in Seoul yesterday. And I'm here to check out some cosmetic goods.
Beauty care products, fashion items, food, beverages, and cars all saw an upshot in domestic sales and exports. Even the filming locations are garnering attention.
Yesterday, we visited the location where Song Joong-ki got military training for the drama.
In terms of economic ripple effect, some experts predict Descendants of the Sun will easily surpass the record set by the 2013 drama My Love from the Star, which injected approximately $2.5 billion into the Korean economy.
The success of the drama can not only help boost exports of Korean goods, but also attract Chinese capital into the domestic entertainment industry.
The mini-series has signed export contracts with 32 countries so far, another proof of the show's global popularity. Although the drama came to a close, it seems like the popularity and legacy of Descendants of the Sun will not fade away anytime soon. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Well, those global positioning system devices that you have in your cars, it looks like it has become an essential for modern drivers today, not to mention that they have tremendously benefited public transportations. But how accurate are these devices and how dependent can we be on those machines when we drive? Lee Yun-shin has more.
Not sure of the directions to where you're going? No worries. All you need to know is the destination's address, and the handy GPS navigation device will kindly suggest the fastest way to get there. It's almost impossible to imagine driving without one of these devices in your car these days. So this may come off as a surprise to some, but experts are suggesting that it may not be the smartest thing to do to solely depend on these machines when you drive. Being overly dependent on GPS navigators can be detrimental in two ways. First, the device can lead drivers the wrong way due to either malfunctions or lack of updates on the latest road information. In one recent incident in Seoul, South Korea, a driver was led off the street and ended up on a railroad. Although no one was injured, firefighters had to get the car safely back on the road, and the train was delayed for 20 minutes. What could also take your attention away from driving is just the device itself. Similar to texting or daydreaming, paying too much attention to the visual images and sounds from the device while driving can cause what's known as perceptual blindness. Our brain is not wired to focus on more than one complex task at a time. When we think we're multitasking, what we're actually doing is rapidly shifting our attention from one activity to another.
It's best to use the GPS devices as secondary reference. Your focus needs to be on the road ahead of you always.
Surely, GPS navigators have made daily life a lot easier, but just like any other technology, it shows the best result when it is not abused, but used properly. 이은신, Arirang News.
The Democratic candidates for U.S. president squared off in an angry debate ahead of the crucial New York primary. Bruce Harrison joins me live in the studio. Now, Bruce, this could be described as a shouting match. I mean, at some point, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders were trying to yell over each other with a noisy crowd in the background.
It was a really noisy crowd, and it certainly did get heated, Kun-young, but that's not to say the tone matched some of the debates we've seen amongst the Republican candidates. But this showdown between the former Secretary of State Clinton and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders definitely marked a contentious turn in their race.
So the candidates argued over Wall Street banks, gun control, and minimum wage, but lately they've been bringing up each other's qualifications.
Yeah, this line of attack is one of the most negative we've seen so far in the Democratic race. But Sanders actually pulled back a bit about some of the comments he made. He did concede that Clinton is qualified, but she showed poor judgment by taking money from Wall Street for speeches, voting for the Iraq invasion, and supporting free trade deals. Clinton called the accusations phony and again pointed out Sanders voted for a bill that protected gun makers from lawsuits over the criminal use of their products. Clinton still has a commanding, possibly insurmountable lead, but she hasn't locked up the nomination just yet.
Bernie Sanders picks up steam here, does well. It'll be a problem for Secretary Clinton. Why? She's going to have a lot of explaining to do to Democrats all over the country, and the Republicans will be, frankly, rejoicing.
Sanders has won 7 of the last 8 primaries, but Clinton's lead in superdelegates makes her hard to catch. Belgium's transport minister has resigned amid allegations she lied about a report critical of Brussels airport security ahead of last month's suicide bombings. Minister Jacqueline Galland previously maintained before Parliament that her office was not aware of the report sent by EU officials in March 2015. But opposition parties in Belgium say they have emails that prove otherwise. European Commission officials have declined to comment on the report, but say they carry out regular security checks at airports. On March 22nd, 2 Islamic State suicide bombers detonated suitcase bombs in the airport departure hall before a third struck a metro train in the city. They killed 32 people in all and injured hundreds of others. Galland's the first high-ranking official to resign over the fatal attacks. Belgium's Interior and Justice ministers previously offered to resign, but Prime Minister Charles Michel asked them to stay on.
Now, Bruce, over in Canada, its Liberal government is pushing to join a handful of Western nations in legalizing what's called doctor-assisted suicide.
That's right.
Tell us about that.
Well, essentially, Kun-young, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government has crafted a law that would allow doctor-assisted suicide for adults suffering from incurable illness or disability. Now, for now, that bill stops there. It does not apply to minors or the mentally ill. It also only applies to Canadians and residents in that country.
This government is focused very much on respecting Canadians' rights, on defending their choices and allowing them choices, while at the same time protecting the most vulnerable in society.
Last year, Canada's Supreme Court overturned a ban on physician-assisted suicide. The Parliament's expected to vote in early June.
This is certainly an issue that divides many people. What are the odds of the bill passing in Canada?
Well, in Canada right now, there's a lot of support in polls countrywide, but parliamentarians have been concerned over vulnerable Canadians once the law passes.
Right, so it's a concern Trudeau has partially blocked by blocking access of this right to minors and the mentally ill.
That's right.
And also, it's really not a an issue limited to Canada because right here in Korea, there's been a debate over this issue for some time now. And with the introduction of a bill that's called well dying here in Korea.
That passed earlier this year, Kanyang, and it's a bit different. It allows terminally ill patients, those who have no hope of recovering, from rejecting life-saving medications. A bit different than the euthanasia practice that they're pushing in Canada.
Right, but definitely an issue that's of global concern. All right, Bruce, thank you so much for that.
No problem.
Well, time now to get a check on the weather conditions. For that, let's head straight over to our Ji-han at the Weather Center. Ji-han, the weather in Seoul today, that's what you call picture perfect.
That's right. But if you choose to bask under the sunshine while lying on the grass, be sure to use a mat and wash your clothes afterwards to prevent being bitten by ticks.
Right, the city of Seoul is advising citizens to beware, especially when taking strolls at parks along the Han River, so we should be aware of that. But no need to worry tomorrow because rain is in the forecast.
That's right, Kanyang. Well, last weekend was a dusty one, and this weekend should be a rainy one, but thankfully it's just going to rain from Saturday afternoon to early Sunday morning. But as we can see, the amount could be quite heavy even here in the capital, especially tomorrow between 6 p.m. and midnight, so please bear this in mind. And the southern coastal regions and Jeju Island will receive the most amount of rainfall with up to 100 millimeters, while the rest will see 20 to 80 millimeters till early Sunday morning. And the rain and clouds will drop temperatures as well, as the daily low here in Seoul and Daejeon will start out at 10 degrees Celsius, while Busan and Jeju will start out at 12 and 16 degrees Celsius. And as for the daily highs, Seoul will climb up to 19 degrees Celsius, while Busan and Jeju should see a high of 18 and 22. Now, it seems like below seasonal average temperatures are expected on Sunday and Monday, with light rain in the forecast on Monday afternoon. But other than that, typical spring weather is in the forecast for next week. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
That is our broadcast on this Friday night. I'm Moon Gun-young. Thank you as always for being with us. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. Our thoughts and prayers are with those affected by the disaster earthquake in Japan. And we'll see you right back here same time Monday on NewsCenter.